everyone. So glad you're here. I know, I've got to wait, didn't I? Thanks, Kurt. Welcome to the Battle Creek Regional History Museum. And I'd just like to thank you all for coming out today as we celebrate Women's History Month with our third annual presentation of Phenomenal Woman, celebrating the great women of Calhoun County history. Now today's program is sponsored by Honor Credit Union, Elizabeth Newmeyer, and the National Association of Negro Business and Professional Women's Club, Incorporated. Today our cast will include Donna Rickman, Bobbie Mathis, and Toni McPeake Ardis. The writers were Donna Rickman, Toni McPeake Ardis, Bobbie Mathis, and Michael Delaware. And we would also like to thank Matt McCullough from Willard Library for helping with our research on these ladies. Our audio-visual technician, Michael Peer. Our directors for the program, myself, Lora Vasquez, and Michael Delaware. Is that back there? So this program was conceived and produced by Donna Rickman and Michael Delaware. We think got a rhythm going here, right? And without any further, we will present Phenomenal Woman.
Welcome to the Battle Creek Regional History Museum's third annual presentation of Phenomenal Woman. Before we begin, you might be interested to know the significance of the title for this afternoon's performance. In our preparation for this program, we took on the difficult task of trying to select the profiles you will hear about from today. The multitude of amazing women in Calhoun County's history. As the format for the event evolved, it became clear that once we had made our selection of the women's stories to present today, that their lives surpassed the all too common adjectives amazing, incredible, or even wonderful. No, they were far beyond that. It was in the process of trying to resolve how to describe the indescribable woman when I was reminded of a very special poem by Maya Angelou entitled Phenomenal Woman, like even on the table over there. It was a moment of clarity when all the stars in heaven aligned. I could try to describe this for you, but any efforts on my part to do so would be in vain. Instead, it is best that I read you this poem and then ask you as an audience to sit back and take a journey with us through the lives of 7 very special women. It is with hope, then, that you will see this same clarity, not only in the lives of the stories we present to you today, but for the phenomenal woman that perhaps goes unnoticed in each and every one of our lives as we celebrate Women's History Month. I now present to you Phenomenal Woman by Maya Angelou. Pretty women wonder where my secret lies. I'm not cute or built a suit of fashion model size, but when I start to tell them, they think I'm telling lies. I say, it's in the reach of my arms, the span of my hips, the stride of my step, the curl of my lips. I'm a woman, phenomenal woman. That's me. I walk into a room just as cool as you please, and to a man, the fellows stand or fall down on their knees. Then they swarm around me, a hive a honeybee's. I say, it's in the fire of my eyes and the flash of my teeth, the swing in my waist and the joy in my feet. I'm a woman, phenomenal woman, that's me. Men themselves have wondered what they see in me. They try so much, but they can't touch my inner mystery. When I try to show them, they say they still can't see. I say, it's in the arch of my back, the sun of my smile, the ride of my breast, the grace of my style. I'm a woman, phenomenal woman. That's me. Now, you understand just why my head's not bowed. I don't shout or jump about or have to talk real loud. When you see me passing, it ought to make you proud. I say, it's in the click of my heels, the bend of my hair, the palm of my hand, the need for my care. 'Cause I'm a woman, phenomenal woman. That's me.
Look out, fellas. Look out. I see Miss Pendill coming down the road. You better hide all those liquor bottles.
Good afternoon. My name is Mary Ann Jennings Pendill. I was born September 11th, 1810, in New York State, to Ebenezer and Artemisia Jennings. I was raised in Holly, New York. On April 9th, 1931, I married Elijah W. Pendill in South Byron, Genesee County, New York. For the next 20 years, we resided in Batavia and other parts of Genesee County. We had 6 children: Thad, James, Cortez, Edgar, Otto, and our only daughter, Mary. Around 1855, my husband and I relocated our family to the village of Battle Creek, Michigan. I immediately became active in the temperance movement. Battle Creek had a reputation of being a hard town with over 50 drinking establishments. Can you imagine? In 1859, Battle Creek was incorporated into a city, and my husband Elijah was elected the first mayor and served multiple terms. There is his photo on the wall over here. That's my Elijah. During his tenure, he fought vigorously against the saloons in the city. When the Good Templar movement spread over the country, my husband and I became charter members of the Battle Creek Lodge number 78. We assisted in the work of that order and became prominent members. Throughout our lives, we were the uncompromising foe of liquor traffic and became prominent, known throughout the area for our vigorous stand against liquor. In the 1860s, Dr. D.O. Lewis, a famous temperance apostle, came to Battle Creek and gave a series of temperance lectures. He was fascinating to listen to. He aroused so much enthusiasm that it was suggested that the ladies take the matter in hand and make a crusade against the saloons. I listened, took the lead, and put the suggestion into action. Over 60 women visited city saloons, and we prayed with the saloon keepers. After praying, we delivered another message. Yes, we took hatchets and hammers and began smashing the beer kegs, emptying the contents into the streets. This caused great excitement in Battle Creek. In the early 1870s, Dr. Lewis was lecturing in Ohio and talked about what had occurred in Battle Creek. The ladies in the audience immediately acted and inaugurated a women's temperance crusade that spread all over the country. In 1874, the Women's Christian Temperance Union, also known as the WCTU, was founded. Now, Ohio is given credit for starting the movement. However, in Dr. Lewis's book, he stated that the idea of a women's temperance crusade originated in Battle Creek, and that I, Mary Pendill, was the leader of that movement. Dr. John Harvey Kellogg once stated that Carrie Nation's axe-wielding escapades of smashing beer kegs at saloons across the country started in Battle Creek. Dr. Kellogg went on to say, when Elijah was mayor, he was a hot prohibitionist, and Dr. Kellogg remembered how I, Mary Pendill, quote, marshaled a force of workers one Sunday, and with hammer, saw, and lead, they went about chopping up most of the bar rooms. Well, there wasn't even a WCTU in those days. I was also deeply involved in the women's suffrage movement. On January 20th, 1870, at a gathering in Battle Creek, the Michigan State Suffrage Society was organized. Then, in March 1871, the women suffragists met at the first state convention in Lansing to organize a state association. I attended as a delegate. In March 1872, the Battle Creek Women's Suffrage Association elected my husband and I as delegates to the state convention. 2 years later, at the state convention held in Lansing, on May 6, 1874, the call was made to officially organize. At this convention, Stephen L. Bingham, a leader in a dozen radical battles and a wise old campaigner, stood and said that money alone would do the job. And if the women would raise $20,000, he would bring the election a triumphant victory and women would be given the right to vote. People started giving money. A little over $2,000 was raised, nowhere near the $20,000 requested. Mr. Bingham again took to the floor and said, women had not yet learned the art of giving, and they must sacrifice, even dress. So like many other women in history who devoted their jewels to patriotic purposes, I made the sacrifice to which I so firmly believed. When another challenge was issued, I finally stood up. In a trembling voice, I stated that I had already given all my ready money, but I was prepared to sacrifice my jewelry and presented my gold watch, valued at $175 to the cause. My watch was sold over and over again throughout the state until $1,000 was raised. The last purchaser then presented it to the state of Michigan. The watch was framed, along with the history of the Pendill Watch Fund, including the names of donors and amounts given, and now is in the State Historical Museum as a reminder of my earnestness and generosity in the suffrage movement. Unfortunately, the election did not have a good outcome, and it would be another 45 years before women were given the right to vote. Susan B. Anthony referenced my actions in the suffrage movement speeches she gave around the country and said women who could not aid the cause in any other way cast their gold watches into the treasury. I was also involved in several other good causes. I was benevolent to the poor and kind to the unfortunate. I gave largely to deeds of charity. In December 1876, my husband Elijah became very ill with kidney disease. After suffering in much pain for 2 weeks, he passed away on Tuesday, December 19th, at the age of 67. I continued to work in the religious temperance and suffrage movements until just a few years before my death. Oh, I wanted to actively keep working, but my old age prevented it. I was also a member of the First Methodist Church for 45 years, and in 1879, I was gifted a life membership. On the afternoon of Saturday, September 30th, 1893, at the age of 83, I passed away at my son James' home in Vermontville, Michigan. I had only been ill for 1 week. On October 2nd, my remains were brought back to the city. My funeral was held on October 3rd, and I was buried at Oak Hill Cemetery alongside my beloved husband, Elijah. I am Mary Ann Jennings Pendill, and I am a phenomenal woman.
Hello. My name is Evangelist Revene Grant Slater. I was born on August 19, 1911 to George W. and Fanny Grant, and I had 7 siblings. After high school at Battle Creek Central High in 1932, I enrolled in classes at Kellogg Community College of Nursing, thus becoming a licensed practical nurse. I was employed by Battle Creek Health Systems for many years. However, I was a devoted songstress as well, playing the piano at Upton Avenue Original Church of God for many years. Equally, I was a songwriter, poet, and fighter for the protection of children and low-income families to help them learn how to get more job training and skills to become economically sufficient. I grew up in a religious home and environment, as everything was about God, and loving and helping our fellow man and neighbor. I became a nurse because of the need for Negro nurses and caregivers in our community to aid the poor. When I got married to my first husband, Private James Mumford Jr., I really didn't want to think about him being gone and serving our country, as it hurt too much, as an article stated on March 20th, 1945. And when he got hurt, his pain became mine too. It turns out that while serving our country, he was gravely injured overseas in European theater and was then being sent to another hospital in the United States by a military ship. I later divorced him, as was stated in the paper on December 11, 1945, due to irreconcilable differences. Then, in August of 1945, I got word by the Studio Center Music Company of Hollywood that the war song which I wrote, "You Serve the First Course, We'll Dish the Dessert," would be broadcast the following Monday over a West Coast station. I was so happy and felt that the Lord was all in this pie filling. I was blessed later to remarry J.E. Slater in 1946, whereby we took a 2-week vacation honeymoon in Detroit, where he came from and had a business, before marrying me in Battle Creek. We had a son named James and a grandson. Throughout this time, I had been working as a nurse at Community Hospital and had written a poem to President Eisenhower during the chief executive's recent illness. Afterwards, on December 19th, 1957, he later replied in writing, "Thank you so much for your kind message. I am truly grateful for your thought of me." Frankly, I was quite surprised and really wasn't expecting a response at that time. I just admired him and wanted, to send some kind words of healing. Then, in October 1958, funny thing came over me. I had a premonition regarding the status or the state of problems as they relate to welfare and aid to dependent children and families. My concern lay with the mothers and families whose seemed like careless handling of such funds, which had been allocated and paid by the taxpayers in thousands and thousands of dollars, was not being used effectively. Therefore, I proposed 8 steps to Congress as the pioneer of welfare reform in 1956 under the leadership of the Republican Women's Club of Battle Creek, Michigan, in my 8-point plan to the Health, Education, and Welfare Department, Washington, D.C. Incorporated, Aid to Dependent Children, or better known as ADC. The end result? Happier children, satisfied social workers, and contented taxpayers. Following, I wrote on paper, leadership demands righteous authority. Therefore, I should develop something locally within Battle Creek, such as people helping people out of poverty. That is when the revelation of the following came to me. To use a current building for Divine Concerned Citizens Self-Help Empowerment Center, accessible to the public, and in spite of juvenile delinquencies, as to me, it was not that they had bad children, the people out there, but instead the kids needed something positive to occupy their minds. I was the winner of the Silver Poet Award for 1986 by the World of Poetry in August at Marriott's Orlando World Center in Orlando, Florida. It reads as follows: victory for truth. You can't sell the truth because there's no market for it. But a lie is sold quickly because, well, mankind adores it. The truth they'll hide, but a lie they'll confide. It is brought to the forefront and publicized high and wide, while poor little truth is not put into its rightful use, but pushed way back in the corner, along with any old kind of excuse. But while the lie is running poor little truth down, the truth lies dormant without giving a sound or a frown, until the lie finally hits a snag and really identifies it without even a tag. Then truth advances to the head of the class, making the liar stand alone to be punished at long last. Now, the reason the truth has hard trials and tribulations to go through, it is because God, who is positive, the way, the life, and the truth. Next is one of my self-written poems that was recorded by NSR Records. Matter of fact, there it is over there. And sung by Bobbie called Kick the Habit of Hate. Kick the habit of hate. Do something once in life that's great. Kick the habit of hate. Leave all mistakes in life to fate. Love is the objective, the sugar or the bait. Love is most effective when you're dissolved in hate. Love can bring such sweetness when it unites a home. Compassion for your helpmate assures you'll never roam. Kick the habit of hate before you find it is too late. Kick the habit of hate. Assure yourself of something great. On our nation's home front, we surely must abate. All this lust to conquer, we'll get nowhere with hate. Let's ask God's directions and open up all gates. Indeed, I was evangelist. I was a freedom fighter for truth and justice. Thank you, Lord. I passed away from this earth on Friday, March 14th, 1997, at Tender Care Riverside Nursing Center. I am a phenomenal woman.
I'm Mrs. Carolyn Hobart Hurd, and this is my story. Perhaps you have heard about a small village called Union City. You can get to my house by traveling down the old Indian Trail from Burlington. It's also known as the Chicago Road, but you know what we call it now? M60. My husband, Dr. William Hurd, and his brothers first settled there in 1835. We purchased our farm in what was Indian Territory before Michigan was even a state. Well, I was born in Potter, New York, to Colonel Baxter and Eliza Potter Hobart. My father served in the War of 1812 and was a cousin to Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln's fourth great-grandmother was Mary Hobart, who married Mordecai Lincoln. That was a mere 2 years before the Great Squirrel Hunt of 1815. What? Have you never heard of the Great Squirrel Hunt of 1815? Because the land was being cleared for new farms that my father had surveyed out, the wildlife was displaced, and the residents of Yates County fought off bears, panthers, bobcats, and then black squirrels took over the land and the crops. Folks called for a remedy. Thousands of people traveled to the area to rid the locals of the pesky squirrels in the great advertised squirrel hunt of 1815. It was said that so many squirrels were killed that they couldn't count them all individually. They numbered them by the basketful. The winner won by 5 baskets of squirrels. And to this day, it's very unusual to see a black squirrel in Yates County, New York. Well, after this, my parents began building a family right away. And by the time I was born, 8 years after they married, I was number 5 in a growing Hobart clan. Before my father had completed his procreation, there were 13 Baxter Hobart offspring. I guess you could have counted the Hobart children by the basketful too. My eldest brother, Leander, was the first of us to leave New York. He had been called to divinity, as many generations of my family had before, being Quakers and Presbyterian ministers. And Leander became the Congregational Church minister in Union City, Michigan. He faithfully served his parishioners for over 20 years. I followed him to Union City. Soon, a very handsome young doctor caught my eye. William Philemon Hurd. He was a local buggy doctor in the area, and he went by Doc Billy. I married Billy in 1842 in Union City, Michigan. In 1843, our son Thomas was born. We had such wonderful dreams for his future. Would he become a doctor like his father and uncles? A minister like my beloved brother Leander? Maybe he'd be a banker. Well, a farmer? Any of these would have been made for a wonderful life, but none of that was to be. Although we were surrounded by doctors, none of them could save him. We buried his tiny body before he was 3 in Union City Cemetery. I was just 25 years old. And I don't believe I was ever quite the same after that. But later, after Thomas died, we tried again. We were both from large families and wanted a large family. Baby William was born January of 1848, not 2 years after Thomas died. William's brother Theodore had died in the spring of that year, and then our baby William also died in September. That was the beginning of a very dark time for William and me. The next decade would be one of great turmoil for me and America. We first lived in a house on John Street in Union City, and I became more involved in the church and also the secret activities of the Underground Railroad. Leander was involved, as many of our friends in Union City. Most of the trafficking happened right around the corner on High Street. There was a metal marker on the farm's corner, fence post, to let people know that we were freedom friendly. Here was a place to hide. Here was a place to get a hot meal. The Congregational Church also was a known meeting place for abolitionists. I began to feel a new purpose in my life. The air changed and it swept me up. The farm felt different. It was livable, but I didn't want to stay there forever, so I began to dream of a new house in town, a project, a mansion, a place where we could all be welcomed and gathered. But for that to happen, we could not keep the responsibilities of the farm, so I began to look for a family who we could leave the farm to. During the midst of the Civil War, our answer appeared. When the war ended, Union City officially became a village in 1866. My husband and his brothers became involved in many lucrative ventures. But most importantly to me, he began the Union City National Bank in 1865. William was president and chairman of the board. 4 years later, we bought land on the corner of Broadway and Berry Streets and hired the Cubbies to begin building our new home. The Cubbies filled the mighty walnuts and dried them in their barn. 2 years later, we began construction. We built Union City's now famous Victorian villa. Have you ever seen this villa in town? In 1872, it took us 4 years to build it at the cost of $12,000. Do you know how much that would be today? A lot. $324,000 in today's dollars. And today, I'm told that my house is now worth over $1 million. The crew we commissioned to work on the home worked for as little as just 8 cents a day. The villa has had several owners since then. Ron Gibson's family owns it now, and they purchased it in 1978 and began the complete restoration, which was a dilapidated mansion by then. The home had been turned into low-income apartments, and the villa began operating as a bed and breakfast in '82, and it is one of the oldest operating inns in the state of Michigan. The home has a total of 10 bed chambers, suites, and represents the style from the mid to late 1800s. The most current of the completed rooms are a Dr. Watson and Sherlock Holmes bedchamber, which are filled with gaslight London memorabilia. My husband also owned a large Methodist parsonage on the corner of Broadway and Charlotte Street in Union City. My brother Leander Hobart was a congregational minister in Union City. That is not the most interesting history of our home, though. My ghost is said to haunt the villa. As many guests have seen my apparition roaming the house. I spend most of my time upstairs, as evidenced by I call to people in a distinctive whisper. Some have heard my phantom footsteps when it is unoccupied. I open and shut doors, and I materialize in front of guests. One day, an employee of Patricia Polacco, who is a Union City children's book author, came to the villa for a meeting. When she pulled up, she saw an older woman dressed in black on the front porch near the door. The visitor got out of her car and came up to the door and knocked. A young employee answered the door. The visitor casually mentioned the older woman dressed in black to the employee of the villa. She was met with a look of confusion, stating that she was the only person working there that day. It was my ghost that she saw that day, and I could never leave my beloved home. I'm still there today. During my life, I devoted my career as Director of Stockholders in Union City National Bank. I also enjoyed helping with charities and being a benevolent benefactor of many organizations. I donated $2,000 to Olivet College. Do you know how much that is today? $56,000. I feel that a good education is very important and essential, as many of my children went on to be authors, teachers, and doctors. My steadfast faith, you can see on my tombstone in Union City, Michigan. I was strong in my faith. I was Carolyn Hurd, and I was a phenomenal woman.
Good afternoon. My name is Velma. People knew me in my time as Dr. Velma Laws Clay, but you can just call me Velma. All my friends do. I was born into this world on November 3rd, 1940, but no, I did not come alone. You see, my twin sister Vivian journeyed the canal with me. And boy, if we weren't some hacking chicks then. Wait until I tell you my story from birth in the making. Our parents were Levi Timothy and Juanita Rose Laws. And altogether, there were 6 of us children. We had a normal childhood like most kids and lived in the Washington Heights neighborhood, upon which my parents owned several properties. It was very rare that you'd see one of us twin sisters, but not the other, as our sisterhood was cemented from our births, as we always outwardly showed love, admiration, encouragement, togetherness, and support for and toward each other's aspirations and endeavors for success. As we were solid as a rock. I attended Mount Zion AME Church as a young child with my family and accepted Christ as my Lord and Savior. But what you need to know is, even when Vivian and I were in high school, we were both particularly fascinated by a woman called Sojourner Truth. All her accomplishments, since she could neither read nor write. Later, I became a member of Second Missionary Baptist Church and served in the following capacities: Sunday school teacher, coordinator of the Social Outreach Committee, and mentor in the after-school tutorial program. Please understand, it was not enough for me to just join another organization, club, or board and perform my work for 43 years at the Federal Center, Department of Defense, as Director of Equal Employment, to just be another job. No, to me, it was my passion to head up that department for equal opportunities, fairness in practices, and purposeful inclusion for all employees, and programs held throughout the years of my employment. My sister Vivian and I became collectors of notable artists and painters within the surrounds of Battle Creek, calling our collection Journey to Freedom. As we shared the exhibit locally in Michigan and other states such as New York, where much of Sojourner's childhood as Isabella and earlier adult life occurred. And that's why I have my hat, Sojourner. As a single parent, I had the privilege of pursuing higher education at Western Michigan University. I earned a bachelor's degree in business administration in 1987, a master's degree in public administration in 1991, and ultimately a doctorate in public administration in 1998. I literally immersed myself into taking on whatever task I could to pay homage to those who came before me and standing up for their truth, equity, and inclusion, as many cases were record-breaking in their scope and size, and work with them like Miss Truth in humanity is what I done. With God's help and my sister Vivian and brother Count's loyal assistance. As it was, many tasks which could have seemed as obstacles or hurdles became to me as stepping stones, as my family and I encouraged local residents of all nationalities to learn about Black history, being American history. Themes and teaching and learning resonated on the heels of religion, education, children, commerce, womanhood and sisterhood, business administration, human growth and development, volunteerism, exceeding the bar, no limits to creativity, listening for others' voices to be heard, autistic beauty and wonderment, and such just flourished because of my love for my family, for my life, my job, and for my community, as I was forever awakened to the newness in life from so many people and experiences, as daily I thanked God for every breath of life. Likewise, my services, honors, and awards within my community included the following civic organizations and groups in which I felt so humbled to serve. I was a 1985 graduate of the Community Leadership Academy, a life member of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, sat on the board of directors for North Point Woods, a senior living community, Heritage Battle Creek Historical Society, Sojourner Truth Institute, Battle Creek Arts Center, Battle Creek Downtown Development Authority and its advisory committee, Battle Creek Unlimited, Battle Creek Committee on Community Affairs, Battle Creek Community Foundation, Kalamazoo Institute of Art, National Resource Center for the Healing of Racism, Star Commonwealth Board of Trustees, and Seconds New Vision and Outreach Ministries, Incorporated. In 1996, the Battle Creek chapter of the Negro Business and Professional Women's Clubs, Incorporated, awarded me the Sojourner Truth Award, and in 1997 was awarded the Battle Creek Rotary Red Rose Award and the Battle Creek Chamber of Commerce presented me the Athena Award. Also, I became the chair of the Sojourner Truth 200th birthday anniversary celebration in 1997 and was chair of the Sojourner Truth Monument Project unveiled in September 1999. In 2001, I was gratefully recognized as the Alumnus of the Year by Kellogg Community College and Western Michigan University School of Public Affairs and Administration, thus awarded the Alumni Achievement Award. Then, in 2003, I was selected by Scene Magazine as the 2003 Woman of the Year Award. We also developed a presentation in which I emceed called Battle Creek's Freedom Saga, Songs and Stories, in which the audience could see through and hear about our past through reenactments and singing of songs, mainly Negro spirituals, by Count and vocalist Carolyn Ballard. And I felt the program was so timely. Although it focused on slavery and past struggles, it too was to underscore the advances made by the Black community in past centuries. Further, and in closing, my sister Vivian and I were avid art collectors and working with the W.K. Kellogg Expert and Resident Program which brought renowned African-American artists to Battle Creek. We also took our collection called Freedom's Journey, which included local artists on the road, traveling to various cities, such as the state of New York. After all of the happenings which I have spoken about, I died on July 1st, 2016, as it seemed that I had some problems with blood clots. But my memory lives on, and oh, I thank God, I am a phenomenal woman.
My name is Margaret Duffy Werstein. I was born April 11th, 1877 in New York to Thomas Duffy and Anna Irwin Duffy. I was one of 4 children. Eventually, my parents moved the family back to Battle Creek, where my mom was born and my father lived before getting married. Through my teen years, I performed in numerous musical recitals and concerts, locally and in surrounding states. Locally, I performed at numerous social events and gatherings at the Opera House, the Athelstan Club, the Women's League, and various church programs, just to name a few. I remember one performance at the Athelstan Club. It was reported in the newspaper that my numbers were faultless, and though for some time past I had been recognized as one of the best soloists, last evening's performance won me many new laurels. My wonderfully artistic execution, combined with so much musical expression, met and understanding made my selections, which were of the finest, beyond criticism. I was enthusiastically received and claimed a large share of the honors that evening. In June 1895, I performed at the St. Philip Annual Festival held at the Opera House. It was reported that I executed the music very finely, and it evinced the fact that I was one of the best pianists in the city. The audience loudly and repeatedly applauded, and I was shared again with elegant floral offerings. After graduating from Battle Creek Central High School in 1896, I attended St. Philip Music School. I went on to attend the Battle Creek College, studying music, and graduated in May 1898. There, Reverend Father Slater, who's also pictured on the wall over here, presented me with an elegant gold badge showing I was graduating with full honors of music. In 1899, I went to Chicago for a year to study piano at the Sherwood School of Music. On November 7, 1900, I married Louis Werstein in the first evening wedding to be held at St. Philip's Catholic Church. It was a grand society event, and the elite of the city were the guests. 250 invitations were sent, but more people attended, and numerous people had to be turned away at the door. Our reception followed at the Ethelston Club, where the full Germania Orchestra discoursed a delightful music program. After my marriage, I continued to perform piano recitals and study under multiple individuals. I traveled to Vienna, Austria, and Berlin, Germany, to name a few. In Vienna, I studied under Theodor Laszewski, a renowned Polish pianist, professor, and composer. Laszewski was one of the most influential teachers of his time. I also trained under Madame Bluefield-Zeisler. Upon returning from Austria, I continued to play concerts, but I also became an instructor at the Battle Creek Conservatory of Music. For many years, I received compliments on my beauty. In 1901, I was declared an American Beauty by American artist Edwin Reese. He chose one person from each state. My portrait, pictured over here, was painted at the Michigan representative and was displayed at his exhibit at the Pan American Expo. I received a life-size copy of the portrait, done in beautiful French pastels. It was such an honor. In 1903, I competed in Chicago for a coveted spot in a class being given by Madame Ziegler, who had returned to the U.S. from Austria. I competed against 20 other applicants, and I won a spot. When the Michigan Women's Press Association held a state meeting at the sanitarium in 1906, I was selected to perform several numbers at their opening session. Also, in November 1906, I was invited to perform at the Cosmopolitan School of Music in Chicago in front of several well-known musical performers and masters. Although I loved performing, I suffered from stage fright. My nerves would get so worked up that after some of my biggest shows, I would have to check myself into the sanitarium to recover. Life was not easy at times. When I wanted to take breaks from performing, Louis would push me to play. And at times, I would get very sick. I'm a nervous wreck speaking here today. No piano to hide behind. I know that I have been blessed and thoroughly profited by the advantages which were accorded me as a pupil of some of the most notable musical masters, both in this country and abroad. However, on May 25th, 1916, my life would end tragically. I would be one of 3 victims in a triple tragedy that shocked the city of Battle Creek. It was also reported in newspapers across the nation. My husband, Louis Werstein, carried out a double murder and then killed himself. He had been planning this for days. He had indicated to friends that there was impending tragedy soon to come into his life. He then made out a new will and left instructions on what to do if anything happened to him. He started the evening by taking a cab and meeting his best friend, Will Skinner, at the Michigan Central train station. Lewis and I spent a lot of time socializing with the Skinners and spent summers at our respective cottages on Gogwak Lake. On the way to the train station, Lewis ran into Representative Dan Dickey and told him he would, quote, not be here, unquote, in the fall. At the train station, Lewis arranged for the taxi cab driver to take him and Will to the coal greenhouse on Wendell Street, whether Skinner wanted to go or not. There, he beat Will and eventually shot him in the head. He fled the scene and came to our home at 85 Orchard. He entered our bedroom, and then, while I lay sleeping, he shot me twice in the head. He shot me once over the left eye, leaving a dime-sized hole, and then once above my ear. I died without ever waking. He then turned, went to the end of the bed, stood in front of the mirror, and put the gun to his head and shot himself. Lewis had been having some mental issues in the weeks and months leading up to the shootings. Some accounts of people's interaction with him described him as delusional. Others said he appeared perfectly normal. Police officers recalled seeing me trying to get Lewis in the car and came home on multiple occasions when he was wandering the streets. Lewis had been having trouble adjusting his beer business to prohibition. Now, some local modern-day historians try to theorize that there was something going on between Will and I. However, I'm here to tell you, and police reports will tell you, that was not true. Lewis's family even tried to say that he was not competent in the days leading up to the tragedy. At the inquest, they pushed for a verdict of temporary insanity. They also implied that my actions might be the cause of his delusional actions. The only reason for that was that in the will he wrote just before my murder, he left me out, but also left out his family. If they could get him declared insane, then his father would inherit everything. Their attempt failed. It was quite the drama. I am buried at Mount Olivet Cemetery under my maiden name, Margaret Duffy. Stop by for a chat. As you enter the cemetery, I'm buried in the front section on the right in the large Irwin family lot. I come from a large Irish Catholic family. My great-grandparents are buried there, along with my grandparents, all of their children, and several other family members. And most of us have matching markers. You can't miss it. Lewis is buried at Oak Hill Cemetery. His family fought to have him buried at Mount Olivet. However, this was not allowed, and not because he murdered me, but because he committed suicide. The good, if you want to call it that, to come from my death was Lewis bequeathed the Busy Bee restaurant and the cottage at the lake to my mother and sister. Also, my mother fought to have a Catholic hospital built. However, it took years to settle the estate, and by the time it was settled, Lila Post Montgomery had gifted funding for a Catholic hospital. So money from the estate was used to build Werstein Lodge, a home for the sisters assigned to the hospital. Now, I could say more, but I don't want to bore you. Maybe I can tell more of my story another time. There's so much more to tell. But I do have a request. Please, do not remember me as the wife of the man who murdered me. Please, do not remember me for the tragic way I died. Please remember me as Margaret Josephine Duffy, an accomplished pianist, a cherished member of society, and a true friend. For I am Margaret Josephine Duffy, and I am a phenomenal woman.
Ladies and gentlemen, we do hope you wore clean underwear today.
because the doctor is in.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Donna Jean Powell, MD. I was born in Kalamazoo, Michigan on March 30th, 1926. My parents were Velma and Arthur B. Hackley, and my two brothers were named Charles and Arthur. Makes sense? My husband Carl and I had a most beautiful and lavish but sacred wedding and reception dinner, which I shall never forget. And I felt so grateful and thanked my parents. My love for healthcare is what really swayed my heart to venture into the medical profession, along with the same feelings and beliefs I felt from my husband. We both wanted patients to be able to attain fair and just opportunities at the highest level of health wellness via accessing available medical services and breaking any racial and/or gender barriers. In 1951, I graduated from Western Michigan University College of Medicine in Kalamazoo at the age of 25. This happened after I toured Western Europe and various countries behind the Iron Curtain, sharing best medical practices during my senior year in medical school as part of the newly founded American Medical Student Association, or AMSA. What experiences in healthcare I learned on that venture. Remember, the Iron Curtain formalized itself during the Cold War. It became a period of global geopolitical rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union and its allies, lasting from 1947 until 1991, with the desolation of the Soviet Union. Thus, it became a Cold War because there was no direct fighting going on between the two countries. Now, everyone keep in mind that this was quite a momentous and arduous challenge for a woman of color. Where and when did my fascination, followed by study and action with being an early global healthcare advocate, come into play? Well, I really cannot say that it was one thing, but many factors throughout my life experiences and newly learned healthcare practices. Following in the mid-60s, other volunteers and I helped to gather used medical equipment from all over the United States to then travel to British Honduras, now called Belize, to deliver them. I did this to supervise the equipment's delivery to hospitals and clinics with the utmost urgency, professionalism, and care. One might say that I reveled in the challenges and undefined courses that lay before me, as I wanted only health equity in medical practices and services, especially in disproportionately impoverished communities and countries. I later received my MD degree from Howard University Medical School and became a member of Kappa Rho Sigma and Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. A century ago, Black World War I vets demanded better care and got their own veterans hospital. Ironically, I followed in my internship at Freedman's Hospital in Washington, D.C., whereby a century ago, Sojourner Truth had been appointed by President Lincoln to work with the black contraband soldiers and their families during or following the Civil War, and the exodus, known as the exoduster, of the newly freed slaves from the South via the Freedmen's Bureau. I then went on to complete my residency in the specialty of internal medicine at Veterans Administration Hospital in Tuskegee, Alabama, where both my husband and I had become appointed as physicians. This proved great for our marriage as well, versus being separated in different states at that time. Also, the VA hospital was known as the first hospital for having cared for only African American veterans during its beginning days of operation, and was donated by Tuskegee Institute. Thus, we were privy to seeing and practicing healthcare among our own race exclusively. Likewise, it was during that time in Alabama when my husband and I participated in a boycott downtown that left us feeling so humbled and honored to be part of the movement for racial equality at that time in history. After my husband, Dr. Carl Powell, and I moved to Battle Creek in 1958, I ascended to the rank of Chief of Medical Services at the Veterans Administration Hospital, and was the only female physician on the hospital's medical staff for 30 years. Therefore, I felt that I also needed to model great medical knowledge, skill, and presence as a role model for future female physicians following behind me, and hopefully working alongside me someday. Quite amazingly and ironically, my husband followed suit behind me as he too came on board at the VA staff as a surgeon. I believe that we were the first husband and wife team working at the VA. I was an active and loving member with the Seventh-day Baptist Church of Battle Creek. For 31 years, I served as medical director at their summer camp programs yearly, and eagerly loved working with the youth and their families. Keeping the kids fit and healthy was my #1 passion. Truly, I felt blessed and elated. It just seemed like the years passed just oh so quickly, as I watched many of them graduate high school, go on to college, later having their own families, who I would nurse with care, as I had with their parents before them. My husband and I have 2 children, again named Carl Powell Jr. and Lisa Powell, both living in Los Angeles. I sincerely enjoy researching family, genealogy, reunions, social gatherings, and fitness walking, as family, friends, and health fitness simply immersed me in any free time which I had in my latter years. Through the years, I was a Golden Heritage Life member of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. I received the Professional Women of the Year Award given at the annual Truth Awards program for the National Association of Negro Business and Professional Women's Club, Incorporated. And I received the Black Achievement Award of the Veterans Black History Committee. I cannot thank Mrs. Onita Hobart and the staff at Arcadia home health care for their kind assistance and great health care. I passed on June 27th, 2013, at the age of 87, from complications with Alzheimer's disease. I am a phenomenal woman.
How y'all doing?
All right.
Doing okay? Feeling good? Let's give a hand to all these phenomenal ladies tonight. I just want to thank you all for coming. Are you enjoying today's show?
Yes.
I'm going to set this down. It's heavy. My name is Elizabeth June Thornburg, and I was born here in Battle Creek, Michigan, on February 26, 1921. Most people know me by my stage name, Betty Hutton. That's my portrait over there on the wall, holding the shopping bag. Have you ever seen one of my movies? You must be old. I had a very colorful existence on the big screen, but in reality, outside the glamour of motion pictures, Broadway, and performing recording studios, my life was anything but. Let me tell you about my story. My father was Percy Thornburg, who was a railroad brakeman, and my mother was Mabel Thornburg. I was the youngest of two sisters. When I was 2 years old, my father abandoned my mother, sister Marion, and myself. He never came back. In fact, we didn't hear from him again until a few years later. My mother received a telegram informing her of his suicide. My father left, mother moved us to Lansing, and my mom supported us by working as an automobile upholsterer during the day and running an illegal speakeasy at night. It was here I began performing with my sister Marion, entertaining the patrons of the speakeasy while my mom served the hooch. We were kids that danced on tables and sang songs. We had to. It was the middle of the Great Depression. Psst. Due to my mom's illegal bootlegging of alcohol during the Prohibition, we had to relocate frequently. Mom always ran the joint on a small scale until the cops got wise. They would move in, we would shut down and move somewhere else and start all over again. Those were the days. When I got older, my sister and I performed at Detroit nightclubs. And one day I was discovered by orchestra leader Vincent Lopez, who hired me as a singer in his band. In those days, I was billed as Betty Jane and developed my whoop and holler vocal style. From there, I was invited to appear in several musical short films for Warner Brothers. In 1940, I was cast in 2 Broadway productions, 2 for the show and Panama Hattie. I eventually signed with Paramount Pictures and began recording numerous singles for Capitol Records. Life was looking good. In 1942, I was cast by Buddy DeSilva in my first feature film role, The Fleet is In. Beside Dorothy Lamour, William Holden, and Eddie Bracken. Do any of you recognize those names? You must be old. Later, I appeared in The Star-Spangled Rhythm the same year. Soon, I was cast by writer-director Preston Sturgis in the 1942 film Miracle on Morgan's Creek, with my co-star friend Eddie Bracken. This was the second time we would work together. I played a dopey but endearing small-town girl who, after giving local troops a happy send-off, wakes up married and pregnant, with no memory of who the husband is. This was a very controversial topic of the era. The film arose problems with the censors in the film's early production because candid representation of an unwed mother. Additional concerns were raised by the War Department about the portrayal of American soldiers who were rowdy, lacking proper conduct. And they urged the filmmakers to ensure the scenes that the soldiers should result in giving the audience the feeling that these boys are normal, thoroughly fed American soldiers who have an evening of clean fun. Oh well, the film was delayed in a release 2 years over these objections because of this nonsense. When it was finally released in 1944, it was a blockbuster hit. Did you know Miracle on Morgan's Creek was nominated for Best Picture by the National Board of Review in 1944? Preston Sturges was nominated for Best Writing Oscar. In an interview I gave later in my life, I told the interviewer that Preston was the only director in my career that really gave me freedom as an actress. I went on to appear in many films of the 1940s, including Let's Face It with Bob Hope, and The Angels Sing with Fred McMurray, Here Come the Waves with Bing Crosby, blah, 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 who co-produced another musical here in 1945, Incendiary Blonde. You know what incendiary is, right? It's like white hot, white hot. During the World War II, I traveled with the USO and performed with Bob Hope for the troupe overseas. By 1945, I was Paramount's top female box office attraction, replacing Dorothy Lamour. That's a big deal. I went on to appear in films Duffy's Tavern, The Stork Club, Cross My Heart, and the popular Perils of Pauline, where I played a stuck woman. One of the songs I sang in the movie, I Wish I Didn't Love You So, was written by Frank Lasser and nominated for an Oscar. After a few films I didn't enjoy in 48 and 49, I began to feel that my career was on the verge of ruin. But it all changed when Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer signed me in the 1950 musical, Annie, Get Your Gun! Have any of you seen that? That became my biggest film, and I won the Academy Award for Best Scoring of a motion picture. One song I sang in this picture was a duet with co-star Howard Keel. Can you guess what it is? Anything you can do, I can do better. I can do anything better than you.
Better? I can do anything better than you.
Oh, you can.
Yes, I can.
Oh, you can.
Yes, I can.
Oh, you can.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Anything you can be, I can be greater.
That was composed by Irving Berlin. The song became popular in the 1950s, and I would like to think it inspired a whole generation of young girls that they can do anything they want.
All right.
Annie, Get Your Gun was the only film I appeared in where I was nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Actress. The film was such a huge success in my career that my next musical in the 1950s, Let's Dance, was so popular that I was billed above my co-star Fred Astaire, way higher. Can you believe it? In 1952, I went on to join the cast of the film The Greatest Show on Earth. I portrayed a trapeze artist in a circus. The film went on to win 2 Academy Awards for Best Picture and Best Story. The same year, I made the film Somebody Loves Me, and then had some clashes with Paramount. I was on my 3rd husband at the time, choreographer Charles O'Curran, and he wanted to direct me in a film, and they refused. I left Paramount and went to Las Vegas to achieve great success performing in live theater for years. I then made a few smaller films until my final film in 1957, which was Spring Reunion, which sadly turned into a financial disappointment. In 1959, Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz took a chance with me on their company, Desilu Productions, and gave me my own CBS sitcom, The Betty Hutton Show. This show ended after 30 episodes, but still many people fondly remember it. Do any of you remember that? You're not going to admit it anymore, are you? In the years that followed, I returned to Las Vegas and then toured the shows across the country. In 1964, I temporarily replaced Carol Burnett in the show Fade In, fade out while she was hospitalized. I also made a few guest appearances on popular TV shows during this time, including Gunsmoke. From the mid-60s, from the early 70s, my career started to decline significantly. I had suffered from depression, and I struggled with alcohol and prescription drugs, and disappeared from the public limelight. My mother died tragically in 1962 in a house fire. I divorced my fourth husband, a jazz trumpeter, the same year. This was not a good time for me. My whole legacy of 4 failed marriages, I came to realize that all these men that I married were infatuated with Betty Hutton, my larger-than-life performance and screen persona, and never really got to know the real me underneath it all, who was Elizabeth June Thornburg. My first husband and I did have 2 daughters, Lindsay and Candace, and my third daughter in my 4th marriage was Carolyn. My relationship with my daughters over the years became estranged, largely due to my personal struggles and my career. From 1980 to 1983, I returned to Broadway for a brief comeback, playing the role of Miss Hannigan in the production of Annie. Have you ever seen Annie? That's not too old. Along with a few other projects during this time, in 1999, I returned to California and lived in Palm Springs after decades of living in New England. I had hoped to regain the connection with my daughters and grandchildren, but my children remained distant. And in March 2007, at the age of 86, none of my children attended my funeral. Wow. I was buried in Desert Memorial Park in Cathedral City, California. I was a little girl from Battle Creek who made it big in Hollywood. I inspired a whole generation of young girls to sing along and live the mantra, anything you can do, I can do better. I can do anything better than you. I was Betty Hutton, and I was a phenomenal woman.
Well, I hope that you have all enjoyed this performance of Phenomenal Woman. I think our cast did a wonderful, wonderful job. I'd also like to thank our audio-visual tech, Mike. Our carnival barker, Brian McComb. Access Vision for coming and taping this whole performance. And I believe Donna would like to introduce someone to us that was
I
able to
certainly
attend.
hope he won't mind, and I certainly hope I'm not leaving anybody out, or we're not, because we're a team up here, leaving anybody out. Mr. Count Laws, who is the brother of Velma Laws, could you please stand? Do you have any remarks or anything you'd like to say? Or?
This is a wonderful program. I learned quite a bit, and so thankful that you honored my sister and all the other ladies who are honored here today. And performances put on very great. That was phenomenal. Thank you.
Thank you. We certainly don't want to do this. It's kind of hard to see that light bright on it. But hopefully, oh, here we go.
We're the family of Dr. Donna Jean.
Oh!
I was choked up.
Thank you for coming.
And the Battle Creek Regional History Museum thanks you for being such a great audience.
Thank you.